Says 2 o'clock, so we can go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to have our Find Your Ancestor session today on getting the most out of Ancestry.com. For those who don't know me, I'm Katie Stilp. I'm the local history librarian here at Appleton Public Library in Appleton, Wisconsin. And for those who aren't familiar with where Appleton is, we're just south of Green Bay, so deep in the heart of Northeast Wisconsin Packer country. Thank you again for joining us this afternoon. I just have a couple quick announcements before we dive into today's program. Just a reminder that for those who are local to the Appleton area, the library is still currently closed until May 23rd. For those unfamiliar, we're going through a building project right now, so we're moving to a temporary space over on Kensington Drive, and we'll be there for about 18 months while they renovate our current building. During the closure, of course, you can still reach us via phone Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, or via email, and that contact information is on the first page of the handout if you'd like to reach out to us. But again, on May 23rd, we'll be opening up again at that temporary location on Kensington Drive. Thankfully, during this closure time, we can still continue offering our awesome, amazing library programs like the Find Your Ancestors series. We just want to thank the Friends of the Appleton Public Library for providing funding for this series and allowing us to continue to bring amazing speakers every month. We definitely couldn't do it without their support. And for those, maybe this is your first Find Your Ancestors series. This series actually happens once a month, every month of the year. So if you check out that first page of the handout, it has some information on our upcoming programs with links on registering for them. So what we're going to do this summer is we're actually going to transition from the Saturday at 2 o'clock time to Thursday evenings instead, just because, you know, the hours that the library is open. So our next session is going to be Thursday, June 16th at 6 p.m. and that's going to be on Wisconsin genealogy resources with professional genealogist Angie Knutson. So if you have Wisconsin ancestors, you definitely want to check out that handout and then register for that program for June 16th. Our July session is going to be on school records, and then in August we'll talk about Fold 3 Library Edition. And again, you can check out the handout or post the link in the link for the handout again in the chat if you haven't downloaded it yet. You can take a look at that first page, and that will have the information on the upcoming programs and the links to register for them. And you do get a reminder email a week before, a day before, and an hour before the program. So even if you register today, you'll still get that reminder. If you've missed any of our past Find Your Ancestor session, you can check out our library's YouTube channel. And there's, of course, a link to that in the handout. Not every presentation is recorded or up there indefinitely, so be sure to register and attend live if you're able to. And even if you can't attend a live session, definitely register, and then we usually send out a link to that the handout and the recording if we are able to record it. We are recording today's session, and then I will send a link out to the video to everyone next week sometime, hopefully Monday or Tuesday. If you have any questions during today's session, you can use the Q&A box, which is located on the bottom of your screen. I'm doing the presentation today, so I won't be able to see any questions that come through that chat box, but I will see the Q&A box at the end, and we'll answer those questions at the end. So if you have any questions, feel free to type those into the Q&A box. I'm going to enable closed captioning now as well. If you guys need that, you can feel free to turn it on. If you don't need it, you can definitely turn it off, and it will not, take up room on your screen for you. Just be aware that that transcript is live, so it's not 100% accurate. If you have any library-specific questions or need help navigating any of the library's databases, especially the genealogy ones, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is in the handout, and I also offer one-on-one sessions via Zoom where I help answer genealogy questions and show genealogy databases. So if you're interested in one of those, definitely check out the handout and check out my email address and send me a time, and we can get an appointment booked. Also, at the end of today's presentation, there's a short 8-question survey from Project Outcome, which is an American Library Association sponsored initiative. If you could just take a minute to fill out the handout and let me know what you thought of today's presentation, we really appreciate it. And there's also a spot on there to let me know what future topics you'd like us to cover in the Find Your Ancestors series. I'm still working on the remaining dates and topics for 2022. So that is definitely a helpful question to answer for me if you have something that you'd would really like us to tackle. And that survey will pop up as soon as you close out of Zoom. So feel free to take it, or if you need to take it later, there's also a link to the survey in the handout. All right, so without further ado, I can post the link to the handout again one more time and then pull up my presentation and we can go ahead and get started. All right. Oops, wrong thing. There we go. All right, so again, we're going to be talking about getting the most out of Ancestry.com, and I'm Katie Stilp, the local history librarian here at Appleton Public Library. So first, before we get started, I just have a couple disclaimers to go through. I just want to let you guys know, yes, Ancestry.com is awesome, but it's just one of the many tools that you should be using in your genealogy research. It's not the only genealogy site. There's plenty more, but this is the only one we're really going to talk about today. And I'm going into this presentation assuming a few things about you guys. Either you currently have a subscription to Ancestry.com, maybe you've had a subscription in the past, or maybe you've used the free library edition and are familiar with the basics of the site. We're not going to cover basics on how to use the site because I'm assuming that you guys already know that. I'm kind of trying to go the next level and teach you guys some of the kind of easier ways to use the site and get the most out of the site. Does this presentation mean that you have to have a subscription to Ancestry.com? I have no stock in Ancestry.com, so I really don't care if you have a subscription. There's definitely free ways to access Ancestry.com, and we'll talk about that, of course, because, you know, Ancestry.com does cost a lot of money. So some people are really hesitant to use the site or aren't able to financially. But stay tuned because I will talk about some ways that you can save money or how to use the free library edition as well. Quickly, I just want to talk about the differences between the paid membership and the library edition. So the paid membership, of course, like I just said, can be a little costly, and I will share some tips on how to save some money in a little bit. You can also build your tree in the paid edition. You can make it public where everybody can see it and search it, or you can make it private where you're the only person who can see it. And of course, if you pay for a membership, you're getting access to a lot more collections because of course you get what you pay for, right? But you can also really save things very easily in your tree on the paid edition. You can contact cousins and connect with other people who are researching, things like that. The library edition, of course, is free with your library card if your library system subscribes to it, which, in case you didn't know, the libraries do have to pay quite a high fee to offer this database for you. So if you do have a library that does have that free library edition, definitely use it and get the most out of it because your library is really paying a lot of money to have this for you to be able to access. The one major downfall of the library edition is that you can only use it at your library. Of course, during the pandemic, they did have home access because, you know, a lot of libraries were closed or discouraging people from hanging out at the libraries for a long time. And of course, at the beginning of the year, when the pandemic started to get a little bit better, they decided to have it back at the library only. And just so you're aware, the library has no choice in that decision. It's all the people at Ancestry and ProQuest, which is the company that owns the Ancestry Library Edition. So the library has nothing to do with it. We can't say, hey, we want this at home all the time because we don't get that decision. We just pay for it, and they tell us, you know, how we can have access for our patrons. Some downfalls of the library edition is that you can't build your tree there at all. Of course, because you're only using it at the library, you aren't like signing into an account or anything like that. You can't message potential cousins or things like that. And if you have to save, you either have to save things that you find at the library or email them to yourself and then upload them to your tree. You can have a free Ancestry account or use some other genealogy software and then attach those to your tree there. I've had people, you know, build trees in the free Ancestry account and then download things from the library edition and then upload them to your free Ancestry account. And I'll show you a little bit later towards the end of our presentation how you can do that if that's something that you're interested in. If you don't already have a library card, I just want to briefly tell you why you need one, especially if you are working on your genealogy. Number one, it's free, so why wouldn't you want a library card, of course? And you can get access to a lot of genealogy databases off the top of my head, we have like 5 or 6 here at Appleton Public Library. But we also have, newspaper databases, 3 or 4 of those. We have databases on how to learn foreign languages. So if you're dealing with like German church records in your genealogy, you can learn a few German words in order to be able to better read those records that you're finding in your genealogy. And then there's, of course, things that you can get for entertainment, magazines, ebooks, audiobooks, physical material, there's streaming media, and just so much more that you can get, again, free with your library card. So definitely, if you don't have a library card, you sure need to get one. And I, of course, say that as a librarian, but even if I wasn't a librarian, I am a huge advocate of using the library and all of the free resources we have. If you are a Wisconsin resident, you can get a library card to any of the public libraries in Wisconsin for free. So say your local library doesn't have Ancestry Library Edition, for example, or they don't have Fold 3. Well, maybe the next county does, or a library 3 counties away that's a little bit of a shorter drive or longer drive than your local library has that. Well, go there, get a card, and then you can use some of their electronic databases from home. And again, you can get that for free. I know a lot of other people are joining us from other states, so maybe your states are a little different, but definitely inquire with your local library to see what the rules are and where you can get cards, or if you can get a guest card some places, you can also do that. All right, so let's talk about some tips and tricks now. First, we're going to talk about searching and how to begin your search when you're in Ancestry.com. So a lot of people tend to search directly from their family tree or from an ancestor's profile, and I don't want you to do that. So what I mean is if you go to your ancestor's profile, a lot of people will come here and hit this big search button that says search. So like if we do that, this is what it will look like if the internet will work here quick. So you'll see over here on the left-hand side, it has basically everything on my ancestor in this search. So I have over 4,000 results of, things to go through. That's a lot of stuff to go through. And it's really narrowing down everyththing because it's putting, oh, she lived in Breed, she lived in Chicago, she was married here, she was born there. Well, if I'm just looking for her birth record, I don't want to put where she was married or where she died or where she lived, things like that. So that's why I want to discourage you from always using that search button in your ancestor's profile. Instead, I want you to go to the main search function and start fresh. Have a blank search and then just type in your ancestor's name. And Ancestry will try to autofill that search, or they'll suggest a quick fill, and then try to put in all that information on your ancestor again. So don't do that. What you want to do is you just want to go to the main search page. So to get here, you just hit search up here, and then all collections, and it will bring you to this main search box. Then I just type in my ancestor's name right here. And see this is what I mean by the quick fill. So if you would click on this quick fill, it's going to do the exact same search like we just did for my ancestor's profile, where it's going to put in her birth information, her death information, all of her kids, her husband's name, everything I've ever put on this ancestor in my profile for her. It's going to put it in that search. Well, I don't want that. I maybe just want to start with her name, or maybe a place, or maybe a birth year, things like that. And then we can kind of tailor our search based on what we're looking for. So you only want to search what is likely going to be in that record that you're looking for. You want those search terms that you're going to put in there in the search box to be based on what you're searching for. So again, if you're searching for a birth record for an ancestor, what do you think your search term should be? It should be the person's name, their birth date, maybe the birth location, maybe their parents' names, things like that. Again, on a birth record, you're not going to find, their marriage date. You're not going to find her husband's name. You're not going to find her kids. You're not going to find her death date. So why would you put that in the search box? You're just narrowing down the search that way and, making the results irrelevant. So again, you want to tailor those search terms to what you are searching for. So if you didn't get the records you were hoping for, maybe you tried a search with the person's name and their birth date and the birth location, and you didn't get the results you were looking for, of course, number one, maybe it's not online. Not everything is online, of course. But number two, maybe you just need to search and use different search terms. So again, for that birth record, if you want to try searching with just the birth date, or maybe try searching with just the parents' names, or try searching with the parents' names plus the name of the child. Again, use those different search terms with various levels of information in that search box and see the different results that you're going to get. Because different searches are going to give you different results, and there's just not one perfect way to search every time you search. I also want you to rethink some of your assumptions or things that you believe are true. So maybe some other record pointed you to a certain birth date, like maybe the person's obituary said that they were born on this date or born in this location, or that this is their maiden name. Well, how do you know that that information is true? If you're looking at it on an obituary or a death notice, obviously that person didn't provide that information because it's, after they've died, somebody else has written this, somebody else was the informant. So rethink that, maybe this birth date is incorrect. So maybe searching with just a person's name or just their parents' names will bring up that birth record because maybe the birth date was off by a week or a month or a day. Or maybe the location was different. Maybe you thought it was Chicago, but it was Peoria. Who knows? So in genealogy, the big standard is reasonably exhaustive search. So what you want to do when you're searching and using Ancestry.com is you want to cast that search net very wide. So providing, more vague details instead of very focused, specific data in those search terms, because then you're going to increase your chances of finding your ancestor. And by doing those multiple searches with different information every time and different search terms every time, you're going to do an exhaustive search and you're going to cast that research net very wide to account for those different things that we didn't expect to find. So accounting for maybe the birth date that you thought was wrong, or maybe the location was wrong, or maybe the maiden name is spelled a little bit differently in her birth record versus her marriage record or her death record. So again, using multiple different searches, using different search terms, that's going to maybe get you some results that you weren't expecting, but maybe it's your ancestor and you get lucky. So I'm going to do a quick demo just to show you what it looks like when you do kind of two different search terms and what your results are going to look like when you do those two different search terms. So I'm going to search for Frederick Kebschel, who's one of my great uncles. So again, I don't want to click on this quick find, even though, hey, it has all the information that I could possibly want in there. I'm just going to search by his name and the birth year. And I'm going to put in a birth location very vaguely, even though I know exactly where in New York he was born. I just want to make it very vague, just to the state. And I'm going to click search. And you see it comes up with 188 results. So I have like a draft registration, I have a find a grave registration for him, things like that. Maybe it's not exactly what I'm looking for. Maybe these are about him, maybe they're not. You can go through the results and see. But then I'm going to show you, if you edit the search with this little pencil, what we can do is we can take out his name, we can take out the location, we can take out the birth year. Maybe I just want to search by his father's name and his mother's name. And then I'm going to show you what kind of results you get there. All right, so we had 188 before. Now, if we just put in the parents' names, we have over 3,000 results. Maybe by doing this, you're going to find out, hey, this is a sister I had no clue he had, or this is a brother I had no clue that my ancestor had, and you're adding more to your family tree then because you're doing a different search and using different search terms. I also want to remind you that location is extremely important. So you saw in my example that I just did that I typed New York only, even though I knew he was born on Staten Island. I know he was born in Richmond, which is part of Staten Island. I could have put that in there, but maybe it's too narrow of a place. Maybe I thought he was born in Richmond, but he was born somewhere else on Staten Island. I want you to start typing that location, and when you see it as a drop-down choice, you want to select the exact recommended location. And what I mean by that is, in this example, if I'm typing Chicago, I want this one that says Chicago, comma, Cook, which is the county, comma, Illinois, which is the state, comma, USA, which is the country. So if you would have just typed Chicago and left it in there, Ancestry kind of gets confused because look at, you can see there's a Chicago Heights, there's a Chicago in Kentucky, there's a Chicago Ridge, there's a Chicago in Nebraska and in North Dakota. So, again, maybe Ancestry gets confused and gives you all these different Chicagos, or maybe it only gives you Chicago, Illinois, because that's what you are going in assuming. You read something that said your ancestor was born in Chicago. Well, what Chicago? Is it Chicago, Illinois? Is it Chicago, Nebraska? Is it Chicago, North Dakota? So don't make an assumption on that location. Maybe you just want to search in Illinois, or maybe you just want to search United States because you know that they were born in the United States. I also want you to try your search both at that city, town, or village level, and then search again using just the county, just Cook County, Illinois, or just Illinois, or just United States, like I said. Again, that's kind of how you are going to find out things that maybe you thought were right aren't right, or maybe you're finding the record in some place that you weren't expecting it. So don't make that assumption that just because they lived there doesn't mean that they were married there or died there or born there. So like a good example for Wisconsin is that marriages happened in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, even though they lived in Wisconsin. I can't tell you how many ancestors I found that, they lived in Oconto County, Wisconsin. I looked all through the marriage records of Oconto County and I could not find them. And I had always been told from, my family that that's where they got married. Well, I ended up broadening my search to the United States, and then I found out, hey, they went up to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and actually got married. I now have their marriage record because I broadened my search and didn't just go in thinking, oh, maybe for whatever reason they didn't register their marriage in Oconto County. Well, they didn't register it there because they didn't get married there. So again, doing that broader state level, or you can do a state and adjacent state search, or you could do just a county or a country search, and that can help you capture some of those records that maybe aren't where you thought they would be or you thought they should be. Also, don't forget about boundary changes. So of course, every boundary has changed throughout time. And remember that a record created in 1880, it might be filed under that 1880 boundary, or it might be filed under today's boundary. Ancestry really isn't great about making this consistent, so definitely check both. And there's a really great source with boundary changes if you have access to it either at the library. Otherwise, there is access to it through Heritage Quest, which is kind of a different genealogy database that's owned by Ancestry, that's kind of the at-home use of Ancestry. And it's called the Map Guide to the U.S. Federal Censuses from 1790 to 1920, and it's by William Thorndale and William Dollarhide. And it has really great maps, and you can page through the maps or click on the maps if you're using electronically for those different years. So you can see what the boundaries were in 1790, you can see what they were in 1800, 1810, 1820, etc., etc. And you can see the different changing boundary lines. So if you know your ancestors lived here in 1830, look at the 1830 map and then you can see where the different counties were and see maybe where my ancestor lived was really close to one other county. So if you're not finding it in the county you thought it would be in, maybe it's in a different county. Maybe they drove a little or used their horse and buggy and got married somewhere a little closer to home or a little further from home, depending on where the person who was marrying them lived, things like that. So definitely location is important, and take a look at those boundary change maps. I also want to talk briefly about crafting your search. So again, we really want to start with a broad search and then narrow it down using some of the filters on that left-hand side, and then you want to refine as needed. So the recipe for success is starting broad, narrowing down, and then just continue to keep refining that search depending on what you're searching for. So what do I mean by the filters on the side? If you see, I started my search broad, I just put my ancestor's name here. And then along the left-hand side, you can see all these different categories. So there's census and voter list, there's birth, marriage, and death, military, immigration and emigration, etc., etc. So if I click on that, I can narrow it down to just birth, marriage, and death records if that's what I'm looking for. You can also filter down by location, or you can filter down by record date. Why are you including the over 1,000 records from the 1600s if your ancestor was from the 1900s and you know that that's during the time period that they lived? So again, narrowing it down a little bit, making that search a little bit more manageable for you. Also be aware that you can narrow a search too much, which is why, when I first started talking about searching, I told you not to put all the information on your ancestor in those search boxes, because if you put all that information in there, it's just going to continue to narrow it way too much and be so specific that, putting in that information in there is just going to confuse the database. And this is why we tailor that search to what you want to search, and not just doing the I want to find everything on my ancestor search, which, of course we all want to find everything on your ancestor in your search, but you definitely want to tailor your searches to what you're looking for. If you know you're looking for their birth record, put in that information on their birth that you might know, and don't put in their marriage information, don't put in their death information, don't put their kids, their spouse in there. Just put their birth information stuff in there in that search. I also want to encourage you to maybe switch to categories view when you get to that results page. So say you're looking for a birth certificate. Well, you don't want to go through all the city directories or all the census records if you only want to look at those vital record collections. So if you see on the results page here, there's a spot that says records, and then there's a spot that says categories. So the default is to always just show records, but if you click on categories, this is what it's going to look like. It's going to break it down by the various categories that we just saw on the left-hand side. So the census and voter list, the birth, marriage, and death, the military records. So what you could do is you could click on just birth, marriage, and death, and it's going to give you the 57,000 results from just those birth, marriages, and deaths. Or you could even go a step further and say, oh, I know my ancestor was born in England during this time period that this database covers. So let me just click on that database, and then I only have 3,000 results to go through or to narrow down further and see if I can find my ancestor's birth record or their christening record in that database. I also want you to consider using wildcards because those could really help you when you're searching. So if you're not familiar with wildcards, what you can do with a wildcard is you can replace a single unknown letter. You can find names that begin with the same letters. You can find first letters, for example, like, say that an S was misindexed as a K because the handwriting is a little rough to read. You could also use a wildcard to find alternative spellings of the same names. So Lacey, can be spelled with a Y, it can be spelled with an EY, with an I, with an IE. So if we put LAC and then the asterisk, that is going to give us those results for those different spellings of Lacey. So what are the wildcards? If you use the question mark, that's one of the wildcards, and that's going to substitute one character. So for example, if you don't know if your Nielsen ancestor is spelt with an E or an O or an A, what you can do is you can put a question mark between the S and the N, and it's going to give you all those various spellings with the E, with the O, with the A, with whatever other letter there might be in between that S and the N. The other different wildcard that you can use is the asterisk, or the kind of star symbol, and that's going to substitute between 0 and 5 characters. So if you put MAT plus the star, it's going to give you results like Matthew spelled with 1 T, Matthew spelled with 2 T's, Matthias spelled with 2 T's and 1 T. It's going to give you Matilda spelled a couple different ways with the H or without the H, etc., etc. So that's kind of more of a broader search by using that star, whereas if you're just using that question mark, you're only substituting one character. All searches containing wildcards must also contain 3 non-wildcard letters. So if you want to do the star plus ILL, that's going to work because you have 3 letters after that star, which is the wildcard. But if you just have star and then 2 letters, IL, that's not going to work at all because you don't have enough non-wildcard letters in that search. Also be aware that with wildcards, the first and the last character in a search can't both be wildcards. So if you're searching Johnson, for example, you could put that question mark at the beginning for the J, or you can put that star at the end for the S after the SEN or SON. because that would work, but you can't put the question mark at the beginning plus the star at the end because it just won't work that way. Wildcard also does not work if you have what's called Soundex search turned on, which is an option in Ancestry. If you're not familiar with Soundex, that is an algorithm used to search for alternative spellings of a name using the way it's pronounced. So you might have Smith, and maybe they spell it with a Y instead of an I. They both sound the same, but they're spelled differently. So Soundex will help you kind of find those spellings that are, the same name but pronounced a little different, or pronounced the same but spelled a little differently. If you still can't find your ancestor when you're trying to do all these different searches and you're still just not getting it, again, remember, not everything is online, but also try a couple other little search tricks that I have for you. Try searching without a name. I know this sounds a little crazy, but that might help you get past a really badly indexed name, or find people that you didn't know you were looking for, like siblings of your ancestors you didn't know about. So remember back to our example of searching a birth record. If I just put in the parents' names, I'm maybe finding a sister that I didn't know about, or a brother I didn't know about, because, nobody had known that he had a brother Harry. Maybe he died young, or maybe he moved away and people didn't keep in contact with him, whatever reason. Again, searching without a name maybe will find those records that you didn't expect to find. Sometimes you also get lucky by just browsing through the film, and maybe that's your only chance to actually find your ancestor in, a census record or a passenger list. It might be time consuming depending on how large that collection is, but it might pay off in a really big way. So, for example, when I was looking for a passenger list for my third great grandfather, I could not for the life of me find him. I knew approximately when he came to New York and what time period. I didn't know the ship name, but I kept looking through page by page in the month and the year that I knew he was in the port of New York, and I eventually found him just by going page by page. And I saw the index, it indexed our last name with a K instead of an S. So it's like, and it was really badly butchered indexing, and I wouldn't have found that or tried to, tried all these different search terms to try to find him, and it still never came up. But when I browsed through the film, that's when I actually found him, and it paid off in a big way. Next, we're going to talk about the card catalog. So if you didn't know, just like libraries, Ancestry.com does have a card catalog, and it's still super cool, and I encourage you to use that instead of that mega search all the time. So again, use that mega search, the search that I showed you at the beginning, but also think about the card catalog. So this is going to help you search in individual collections and search in things that isn't indexed. So not everything is indexed on Ancestry.com or any of the genealogy sites. You do get fewer results by using that card catalog, but they're usually much more relevant to your family because they're location specific. Like if you know your ancestors lived in Wisconsin, you want to search for Wisconsin collections and not just collections that are all over the United States, or that might just be, southern states or anything like that. Be aware that in the card catalog and Ancestry, sometimes they have the location names in a collection name and sometimes they don't. So maybe it's a national collection, or maybe it's a state level collection and it might not be complete coverage. Maybe it says it's a Wisconsin thing, but for whatever reason Milwaukee County isn't included in that. So what you do is you look at the description of every collection before you do a search in it and see if it's even worth your search. So just because it's a state level or a national level collection does not mean that every county, town, city, village is included. Of course, courthouses have burned, or maybe things haven't been digitized yet, or maybe it's not fully indexed, maybe it's only a partial index. And also note that sometimes on those collection descriptions, they do have a date on there where it says the date last updated. So if it does give you a date, you want to see, was it updated recently? Maybe it hasn't been updated in 5 years, and maybe your ancestor died within the past 5 years, so the Social Security Death Index, for example, isn't updated. Well, then maybe check in another year or another month and see, has that last updated date been changed? If so, maybe it's worth it to search again and see if your ancestor is now included in that collection. Also be aware, though, that Ancestry unfortunately doesn't always have a great description for collections, or they don't list an updated date on every collection. So, if it's there, it's great to have. If not, unfortunately, it's just Ancestry doing Ancestry's thing and not being consistent with some things. So I'm going to show you quickly just how to look at the card catalog, how to search it quick, and then how to look at those collection descriptions. So this is what it looks like when you first log into Ancestry, of course. Under the search bar, that is where you're going to see card catalog. So you can either search by title or by keyword, or you can filter down by the various collections here on the left-hand side, or filter down by location or date. So what I will usually do is I'll just type in the keyword, like Wisconsin, and click search. So again, you see some of these results, like these are United States collections. Wisconsin, of course, is probably included in these, but then you'll also see specific ones that are just like Wisconsin. And what you can also do is you can sort over here by date added, you can sort by collection title, by the date it was last updated, by the record count. So play around with that, depending on, when you're searching, how frequently you're searching, things like that. Don't be confused by sometimes it says 0 on the record count, but when you actually look at the collection, there's actually records in there. So just because it says 0 for the record count does not mean anything. So be aware of that. So I'll show you, this is what it looks like when you click on a collection. And then what you do down here, you'll see there's source information, which of course you always want to write down because you want to keep track of your sources. But then if you go to this About section and read through this, this is going to tell you, what kind of things you're going to find in this collection. So it's going to have the full name of the deceased. It's going to have their date of death, the county of death, and the county of residence. It's going to include people who died between 1959 and 2004. And it's only going to include records that are available to the public after 24 months have passed from the year in which they died. Things like that. It's going to give you lots of helpful information. It might talk about, such and such county is not here because there was a fire, or things like that. It might tell you, deaths weren't required until such and such a point. Things like that. And sometimes we'll give you a little bibliography on where you can look for more information. So as you can see, there's no last date updated on this. Again, sometimes Ancestry has it, sometimes they don't. If we look at another one, like if we look at the 1950 census, that obviously just got released in April. So again, you scroll down here and you see the source information, you see the about information that tells you about the collection. And again, there's no last updated date on here, unfortunately. But, again, sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. All right, now we're going to move on to talk about hints and the dreaded shaky leaf syndrome. So, if you're not familiar with what shaky leaf syndrome is, it is what happens when people only use Ancestry.com for the hints. So of course, if you're not familiar with hints on Ancestry, those are the cool little leaf symbol that you see on an ancestor's profile. And yes, hints are really cool, and sometimes they give you records that are really relevant to your ancestor, and it might bring you some really great records. But if you're only looking at those hints on Ancestry.com, you're missing out on a ton of information on your ancestor, because the hints only cover the 10% most popular collections on Ancestry.com. So if you're only looking at those hints, you're missing out on 90% of Ancestry.com's collections, and especially those that are unique to just Ancestry. So of course, the top 10% popular collections on Ancestry are going to be like the census records, maybe like Find a Grave, things that people are continually looking at and adding to their ancestor's profile. But maybe your ancestor, lived in Oconto County, Wisconsin, and there's a really cool Oconto County, Wisconsin collection from the library that, because only so many people live in Oconto County, it's not in the top 10% most popular record collections. Well, if you miss out on that, you might be missing out on some great local information from your ancestor that is on Ancestry.com, but just because you didn't get a hint on it, you have no clue about it, right? So this is why we do something like use the card catalog that I just showed you. You could put in Wisconsin and look through all the Wisconsin collections and see like, oh, there's some really great collections in here just on that state or just on these counties in Wisconsin that my ancestors lived in, but maybe they're not the most popular collections, so they don't have hints on them. So that's why we want to use that card catalog and be sure that we're searching, especially with locations where our ancestors lived. Also be aware that you aren't given all the hints all at once. It's more so based on your activity. So say you're working on your great aunt Ida, and then magically after you clear all the 10 hints that Ancestry first gave you, maybe a day or two later, you all of a sudden get an email from Ancestry.com that says, hey, come explore more about great aunt Ida, and here's 3 more hints. Well, that's Ancestry's way of continuing, to try to get you to use their site more and continue your membership. They're magically saying, oh, we just found these hints, but it's more so based on you researching that person, and then they're going to give you more information. Of course, they're not going to give you all the hints at once, because then people who use that 2-week free trial are just going to blow through all their hints and then say, oh, I'm done, I don't need to have a membership to Ancestry.com, which is not true, of course. Also be aware that hints aren't always correct. Just like any other source that you find when doing your research, you have to analyze it and make a judgment call. Use the context clues. Is it my family or is it not? And of course, that's a whole other talk that we could spend an hour talking about, analyzing records and trying to determine if it's your ancestor or not. Just because it's the same name doesn't mean it's your ancestor. I mean, of course, there's probably 1,000 or more George Hamiltons, but you think, hey, I have an ancestor like August Kepschel. That's a really not common name at all. Well, you'd be wrong, because there's actually I've found in my own research on August Kepschel, who was my 4th great-grandfather, that there was another August Kepschel who lived in Chicago, who also lived in Wisconsin, who has a wife named Amelia, just like my August Kepschel. Some of the kids are named the same, like they have a Fred, they have a Louisa. So, you have to use all these different context clues of information that you know about your ancestor to see, hey, is it my August or is it this other August that I know about? So again, just because you think, oh, this is a really unique name, doesn't mean that it is only unique to your ancestor. There are always going to be people with the same name as well. I know there's more than one me, so, just because you think you have a not common name doesn't mean anything. Of course, I want you to use ancestry trees. There's public trees on there, of course, as hints, but don't ever copy and paste somebody's information that you find on a public ancestry tree. Because again, the accuracy on those trees is going to depend on who's creating that tree. So, what sources did they use when they're creating that tree? How did they build their tree? Did they do some research offline? Have they used other sites other than Ancestry.com? Or did they just say, oh, this is a really cool hint, let me attach it just because it's my ancestor's name and it's got to be my ancestor? Or maybe they saw another tree on Ancestry and said, hey, I'm just going to copy and paste this because it's my family. You don't know how they built their tree. So again, you want to use everything that you find on there with a little bit of grain of salt. Use it as a hint. Possibly this is right, but go that further step. Evaluate everything that you find on that tree. Find ways to prove or disprove that information, or records to back up that information. I've seen people write on their trees that it's verified. That doesn't mean it's verified to you. For whatever reason, they're trying to make it seem like their tree is more professional than everybody else's tree on there. But do the legwork. Be the detective. This is why you enjoy genealogy, right? Is putting the pieces of the puzzle together. You don't want to just copy and paste everybody else's information. You want to make sure that you're getting the right information and connecting to the right family, right? You don't want to all of a sudden find out all this information and then see, oh, I connected to the wrong August. This guy that I thought was my ancestor actually isn't my ancestor, and I spent 3 weeks researching this guy and only to find out, hey, this one record proves that it actually isn't my ancestor. If I would have done a little bit more legwork, maybe I would have found that out a little earlier. So you finally find something on Ancestry.com, you've gone through the analysis, you are pretty sure that it's your ancestor, and you want to save it maybe. Maybe before you want to save it, if you think, hey, it's really dark or it's really light, it's really difficult to read it, there is a tool icon that you see on the corner here. It looks like a little hammer and wrench. What you can do is you can click on that and it will give you some options. So one of the options is called enhanced images. It's kind of something that Ancestry has that, they think makes a difference in their images that makes it a little easier to read. But sometimes if you turn it off, it actually makes it better to read on certain different pages. But you want to make sure, of course, to turn it back on because for the most part, it does make a big difference. If it doesn't make a difference, maybe try to download it and edit it offline or by using some other sort of software. You could also try checking that same collection on another site. So say it's the 1940 census and that page on Ancestry is really difficult to read where your family is. Well, maybe go to Family Search and pull up the 1940 census, pull up that page and, see, is it a little bit easier to read because they have different scans of it. Or at least in Family Search, you can play a little bit with the brightness, you can play with the contrast a little bit, maybe make it a little bit more readable for you before you save it. You also want to be sure to save everything that you find on Ancestry to your computer so you have access to that exact document even after you stop paying for Ancestry. So if you don't know this, if you stop paying your Ancestry membership, if you click on where it says 1940 census, you can't pull up that 1940 census for your Ancestry anymore. They want you to pay, of course, to be able to view that 1940 census again. So what you do is you make sure to save it to your computer and then make sure to do what we call the 3-2-1 backup plan. So that's 3 copies on 2 different media sources with one of those sources being offline or off-site. So for example, you could save 1 copy to your computer. You can save a second copy to a cloud storage device like Google Drive or Dropbox. That could be your one that's offsite, and then you would save it to an external hard drive, for example, so that you'd have 3 different copies, one on your computer, one on your hard drive, one on the cloud. And then, you'd be good if, for whatever reason, maybe your house burns down, you lose your external hard drive, then you always have that one cloud backup, or, something happens to your computer and, those files get corrupted somehow, well, you always have that one last backup on the cloud, for example. Sometimes there isn't anything to download. There isn't an actual image, maybe if it's just an index. So what I do is I use a tool called Snipping Tool that comes on every Windows computer. If you have an Apple computer, you could also do a screenshot, or if you're familiar with how to do a screenshot on Windows computers, you can also do that. I also sometimes will convert it to a PDF. So like if it's a website, like, a lot of obituaries nowadays are showing up on funeral home websites instead of in the newspaper. So what you could do is convert it to a PDF. If you go to File and Print, instead of selecting to print it from your printer, select Save to PDF and then click Save, and then it will save it as a PDF file. And then, in 2 years, you can open up that PDF file if you need it again to be able to read that again. Snipping tool, that will just save it as a JPEG, which is a photo file. So those are 2 different options depending on what kind of software you have or what software you're more comfortable with. Also, if Ancestry just gave you an index, if it just has the name and the date and a little bit of information like that one Wisconsin death record index that we saw, follow up offline or maybe somewhere else online that might have the actual images or might have the actual original records. Indexes don't always include everything that's on that record, so you always want to get that original record. So for that Wisconsin death record index, that's only giving you the name of the person who died, the date they died, the county they died, and where they lived. Whereas if you go to the Register of Deeds office in the county where they died and you see the actual death record, you're getting, their cause of death, you're getting their birth date, you're getting their parents' names, etc., etc. So you're getting a ton more information on that original record than you do on the index. So always be sure to do the legwork, be the detective, get that original record. Now I'm going to talk about a couple really cool things that you might not be aware of that Ancestry.com has. So one of those things is called suggested records. So what suggested records are is they are based on what other people have added to their tree. So what you want to do, just like Ancestry trees, you want to use them as clues and evaluate them because they're not always correct. Again, you have people who are just click happy. They think, hey, it's my ancestor's name. add it, add it, add it, without maybe looking and seeing, oh, maybe that's not my ancestor because it's the same name. So what you want to do is you want to evaluate each of them. And where you find the suggested records is when you look at something like a census record. On the right-hand side, it says suggested records. So it has, for example, a find a grave index. It has a different census record, another census records, a newspaper's obituary index record. All these different records on the side, it's suggested records that it thinks might be your ancestor because somebody else has done the work and added these same records to their family tree, thinking that it's the same person. So again, you'd click on each of these, you'd evaluate it, you'd determine, hey, that's my ancestor, hey, it's not, and go from there. Ancestry also has hidden maps. Again, it's kind of technically on Heritage Quest, which is Ancestry owned. This is what I was talking about when I was talking about boundary changes before. So if you don't have access to the physical book that your library might have on those US Census map guides, what we have is called Heritage Quest Online. If you live in Wisconsin, we do have it for free through all of our Wisconsin library sites. Otherwise, maybe your library locally does subscribe to Heritage Quest Online, or perhaps you could find the physical book for the US Census map guides. So what you would do is when you come to Heritage Quest, you'd click on Maps and then click on Census Map Guides. And then what it does is you would click on a different state, whatever state you wanted to look at. And then you can see right here, it's giving you a map of 1820 Wisconsin and showing you, oh, there's only, these two counties. In the white, it's showing you what the current boundaries are. And what you could do is you could click over here on 1850 or 1880, whenever your ancestors lived there. And then it's going to show you the different boundary changes and what counties are where, etc., etc. So this is an exact scan of what the book looked like if you were to get the actual physical book by Dollar Hyde in Thorndale. Ancestry also has some really awesome free research guides. So it's under their help section. So if you see there's help towards the top, right next to kind of where the search, DNA, and health stuff is. And if you click on Support Center, there's lots of different free research guides, like they give you a guide on interview questions, on creating timelines, on searching death records. There's other tips like 10 places to find your Irish ancestor in America, etc., etc. So if you keep scrolling down, there's tips on tips on tips on, depending on whatever research you're trying to do, that are really, really helpful. They also have a genealogy toolkit on this help section that gives you lots of free charts and forms that you can print or download to your computer. There's things like Dutch Research Center that will help you, translate some of the Dutch records, or there's a German one, or there's an Italian one, or there's Jewish resources on Ancestry, there's Swedish ones. So all these different, again, free resources that will help you in your research or help you be able to learn a little bit more about what you're looking at or help you translate things that you're looking at, things like that. There's also the Family Search Wiki, or not the Family Search Wiki, the Roots Wiki. There is also a Family Search Wiki, which I also highly recommend that Family Search runs. But basically what you can do on this wiki is learn more about how to research specific record types or specific locations. So what you do is it's wiki.rootsweb.com. So say you're looking for Wisconsin vital records. What you could do up here is you could type in Wisconsin vital records and hit OK. And it's going to give you this whole article telling you more about Wisconsin vital records and, how early they were issued, maybe there was a fire at a courthouse or something, or how to get actual certified copies, or how to get a copy, or is there anywhere that I can get these records online, things like that. And it's going to give you lots of helpful links to different collections that are online. Some are for free, some are not. It's going to give you external links to learn a little bit more information. So again, you could use this to learn more about where you're researching. Ancestry also has lots of free collections. You don't need a membership. You don't even need to use the library edition for these free collections that you can use from home. Be aware that some of these are just an index, which, is not going to give you an actual original record, but it will at least point you to, a physical record where you might be able to get it offline. And there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of collections for free. I do have a link to it in the handout for you. So what you do is you can click on where it says view all collections included in this search. You could just do a search from right here of all of the free index collections, or you can just scroll down and it's going to show you all these different free collections that they have. So, there's Denmark censuses for free. There's US federal censuses for free. There's, different papers and things, different birth, marriage, and death records for certain states, et cetera, et cetera. Again, these are tons and tons and tons of free collections. Some of them are just free indexes, but some of them you can actually get physical records from as well. And again, that link is in the handout for you. Now we're going to talk about how to get the most bang for your buck. Of course, we all want to pay less for Ancestry.com, of course, because again, it is a little expensive, especially for those of us who have been researching for a really long time. So of course, I encourage you to take advantage of discounted times. So for the most part, during most major holidays in the United States, they have deals. Buy your mom a Mother's Day present with an Ancestry.com subscription and save 30%, or explore your Irish ancestors this St. Patrick's Day and get 20% off your membership. This is also when it's time to buy those DNA kits, if you are interested in doing the Ancestry DNA, most major holidays, they do have those discounts on those DNA kits. So if you can wait a little bit, I would wait until a major holiday comes up and then make that purchase. This is a tip that I always use, is I get my family to pay for it. Family is always asking you, what do you want for your birthday? What do you want for Christmas? And you just, instead of saying, I don't know, or giving them, some other thing, say, hey, pay for my Ancestry membership for 6 months. That will really help me out. It'll give me, plenty of things to research, and you have that gift for 6 months then. There's also, during the holidays especially, what you can do is you can give a gift membership, even if you pay for it, if you have somebody else gift it to you, or you can even gift it to yourself. So a lot of times, like during the Christmas season, they will have 20% off or 50% off gift memberships. So you can gift it to yourself, and you can put it out, I think, 60 days or 90 days. So even if you buy it on like Black Friday, you can put it out to start in February or something, if that's something that you wanted to do. And that's something that I've done, I think, year after year after year, is gift myself a membership or have my family gift me a membership and save money during that time. Ancestry, of course, always encourages you to auto-renew, or they'll automatically try to renew it. But what you want to do is you want to cancel your membership. Don't auto-renew it. And then usually in a couple weeks or sometimes a couple months, Ancestry is going to send you an email, and they're going to beg you to come back, and they'll usually give you a discount. They'll give you, 20% off if you come back and explore more about your ancestor. Or some people have also called Ancestry right before their membership's about to renew and say, hey, I don't want to renew it at this price. What kind of discounts do you have right now? And sometimes they'll say, oh, to keep you as a customer, we'll give you 20% off. Maybe that's enough to at least save some money for you, and that's something that you're willing to pay for. Or, maybe say, oh, cancel it. And then, 3 months later, when they have a free weekend or a discounted weekend, then you could take advantage of that membership again. So what I sometimes also do is cycle on, cycle off my memberships. So what you can do is you can purchase a 3-month membership or a 6-month membership. And then once it's over, maybe for the next 3 months or the next 6 months, you're going to use Family Search, or you're going to use those free collections that I showed you on Ancestry.com, or use the library edition, or, do more research offline. Or like me, I know in the summer, I love to be outside. I'm not sitting at my computer doing genealogy research. Like, why bother having a membership during the summer if I'm not going to really use it? So, I cancel my membership for a little bit, and then once the cold weather comes back in Wisconsin, I want to research again. I want to stay inside. So that's when I rejoin Ancestry, and usually at a discounted rate, either through my family gifting me a membership or Ancestry saying, come back, we miss you. Also, I want to encourage you to only do the combo deal that Ancestry offers if you really need it. So what they do is they have a combo deal where you can get newspapers.com, you can get Fold3, and you can get Ancestry.com all in one bundle. So only do that if you know you're going to use those 2 extra sites. If you're going to use newspapers.com and Fold3, great. Then do the combo deal. Or maybe only do it for 3 months, or only do the international version of Ancestry for 3 months, and then go back to your regular membership, because that's going to save you money in the long run. If you're not constantly using all those international extra records, during the whole year that you're researching or whatever, save some money and only do it for 3 months, and then really focus on those international records during those 3 months that you have the international membership. Also be aware that Ancestry Library Edition and Family Search, both of which are free, have international records. So be sure to check those records there first before going forward and buying that international combo deal for Ancestry. And remember that your library card, of course, might come with free newspaper or genealogy databases. So I know for Appleton, we have the newspapers.com library edition. We have Newspaper Archive, which is another great newspaper site. And we have Fold3 library edition. So why would you pay the money to have Ancestry plus newspapers.com plus Fold3 when you can get 2 of those resources for free through the library? Of course, you can get also Ancestry Library Edition free through the library if you come to the library and use it, but the other resources are available for free from home. So what you could do is you could only pay for that Ancestry membership to use from home, and then use newspapers.com and Fold3 Library Edition from home, and then have all 3 without having to pay for that combo deal to get all 3. Also, when you don't have an active account, what you can do is you can use what you can on those other free sites like Family Search or Ancestry Library Edition, or maybe some of those free resources that you get with your library card. And then when you find something that you're like, oh, this is only available on Ancestry.com, make a list of things that are only available on Ancestry.com that, next time you're in the library to use the library edition you want to look up, or next time you have an Ancestry membership again, you want to look it up. Don't forget about Heritage Quest, which is also owned by Ancestry.com. And it's something that you can use continually from home just for free with your library card. It has a lot of the census records on there, some other vital records and things like that, that you don't need to waste your time on paying for Ancestry just to get access to those free collections. Again, remember Family Search or other genealogy databases that aren't Ancestry, because Ancestry is only one tool in your toolkit. Use those free collections, use Ancestry Library Edition during those times when you don't have that Ancestry account. And then once you have that subscription again, maybe at Christmas time your family bought you a 3-month subscription. Now you can look at your list that you have that just has Ancestry.com stuff on it, and now you can just continually try to find those things that you have on your list that you need to look at on Ancestry.com, and then really make the most out of your membership and make sure that you're using it during a time when you know what you're searching for, and not just kind of like, oh, I don't know what I'm searching for, I don't know what I'm doing. Now you have actual records that you want to look up on here when you have a membership. You can also still use Ancestry even without paying, so you can still update your family tree on there. You just can't view anything that you have attached to a person. So say you're looking at your ancestor's profile on Ancestry.com and you have the 1930 census saved on there. If you click on it, it's not going to pull up the image for the 1930 census, but that's why you saved everything that you found to your computer, to your external hard drive, to your Google Drive. Then you can just pull up that image on your computer from the 1930 census instead of saying, oh, I'm going to give Ancestry.com $100 more just to look at this 1930 census again. You don't need to do that. You can also still attach records that you find either through Ancestry Library Edition or through Family Search or any other sites, and you can still do this even without paying for Ancestry, and I'm going to show you really quickly just how to do that. So what you do is you come to your ancestor's profile. I just need to get my Zoom windows right here. So go back to my family tree here. I'm going to pull up my ancestor's profile. And then what you do right here at the top where it says add, under the facts part, what you can do is you can add something. So say I found a census record on Family Search. What you can do then is you can click add census. You can type in the date. So say this is 19 2020. You can type in the location, so say it's Chicago, Cook County, Illinois, USA. You can write a description on there if you really wanted to. Before you do that, under attach media, what you can do is you can attach that actual physical, thing that you downloaded from Family Search. So say you found the 1910 census on Family Search, you saved it to your computer. What you can do now is upload it, and then you can choose the file right here. Say you have it saved to your computer, and you just click on that file name and click open, and then it's going to attach it to that record. And see, now the actual image is right here from where I saved it from Family Search. You can change the title or put in any additional information that you want on here. Say you want to link it to this person, or you may also want to add their spouse or their kids that are also attached to there to save it to their profiles. Whenever you're done with that, you just click done. And then if you scroll down here, you'll see where we added it. So I might need to refresh the page here. Oh, so here it is. I put it under 1920, even though I think it was 1910. But now you can see it right there, and the one image of it is attached. So that's how you can add things to your family tree, even when you don't have an Ancestry.com account. All right. Wrapping up, I just want to tell you about some free learning things that you want to take advantage of that will help you make the most out of your genealogy research. Of course, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have the Find Your Ancestors series here at Appleton Public Library. The dates will vary, of course. During the year, we usually do it Saturdays at 2 o'clock Central Time, except for in the summers, we're going to try to do it Thursday at 6 o'clock Central Time. You do have to register for the Zoom sessions because they're virtual. So if you go to our calendar at apl.org/calendar, you can look at details and the 2022 dates and topics, and then click on each of those, and that will have the registration information. As well as in our handout, I have a couple of our upcoming ones where you can register for those. I also really love the site called Conference Keeper. It's a genealogy site where you can browse what programs are coming up through the different libraries or genealogy or historical societies. You can search by topic. So say you want to learn more about Fold 3, or you want to learn more about your World War I ancestry. You can type in World War I, and it will tell you when, upcoming events are happening and how to register for those programs, or if they're in person or they're virtual, or they're hybrid maybe. So definitely I encourage you to check out conferencekeeper.org and sign up for lots of genealogy things that you can take advantage of, usually for free. If it is something that costs money, it will let you know it costs money and tell you how much that is as well. Of course, also check out our YouTube channel for recordings of some of our past programs. And again, that link is in your handout. And we do have a Find Your Ancestors playlist that has some of our recordings of our past programs. Of course, YouTube also has lots of other really great genealogy programs from other libraries or other genealogy societies from around the world. So again, just search on YouTube, World War I genealogy, or whatever you want to search and learn more about. And then it will pop up with some videos that are really helpful that might help you learn a little bit more about what you're researching or give you some additional tips and tricks on what you're trying to find. If you still need some help, I have a couple other free resources in your handout for you. Or again, like I mentioned at the beginning, I do have one-on-one sessions with myself where I will chat with you and try to find a way to help you. Right now I'm doing Zoom sessions for up to 1 hour where I can either show you how to use a little bit more about one of our genealogy databases, or maybe you have a brick wall or you're like, oh, I have no clue where to start on researching this one ancestor that I'm having a really hard time. Can you give me some tips and tricks, or can you give me more resources? Definitely send me an email. That's part of my job as a librarian, is to connect you to resources that are going to help you in your genealogy research, or to show you a little bit more about how to use these sites that I'm really familiar with from doing years and years of genealogy research. So again, my email address is either on the screen or in the handout. Feel free to reach out at any time with questions, and I will take a look at the Q&A box and tackle some of the questions that we have now. And hopefully everybody learned a little bit about something that will help them get the most out of Ancestry.com. All right, someone says, I need to go directly to my primary tree when logging into Ancestry.com. I can't seem to find out how to do it in settings. So let's see. If I share my screen again, let's pull up my Ancestry.com. So under trees, you should be able to select what your main tree is. Like I have a bunch of trees that people have shared with me or trees that I have created. So what you can do under create and manage trees, so you could, go under tree settings and make this your default one. Let's see, manage your tree. I think it's under one of these settings that makes it like the default tree. I don't want to go too deep in my stuff. This is, but I can't remember how to make it your primary tree. Maybe because this is like my primary tree. If you go to tree settings. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how to make that like your default tree. If anybody has any tips and tricks, maybe throw that into the chat box. Otherwise, I can follow up with you offline once I figure out how to do it. Why do you need to put in the country when you're searching? So because Ancestry is an international site, you always want to make sure to put the country in. There's Paris, Texas, there's Paris, France. So you need to let Ancestry know exactly what country you're searching for. When selecting locations that are the same, but are both on the pull-down list, like St. John, New Brunswick, Canada versus St. John, New Brunswick, Canada, will Ancestry give results for both at the same time, or should I search on each separately? So what happens is Ancestry sometimes will pop in there two different spellings, like if you spell it with ST and a period or Saint spelled out, I would try it both ways. There's no kind of default search for those town names, or sometimes like you'll see people will put like Cook County, like Ward 6, like somebody had typed that in and for whatever reason it keeps popping up when somebody's searching it, or like if you save a census record, sometimes it will save it under the ward name. So just be sure to try to delete that ward name if you don't want to search future searches with that ward name in there. And I would, again, try it both ways with the ST and the period and Saint spelled out. Again, Ancestry is not always consistent about what they do that. Where is Soundex located? So let me share my screen again and I can pull that up. So if we go to search and you type in a name, if you show more options, the problem is Ancestry changes this stuff all the time. All right, so if you can click on exact, or you can do exact and sounds like, exact and similar, exact and Soundex. So some people will always click on those, or some people will leave them unclicked. Again, try it both ways and see what works best for you. I think you can also do it under the first name. Oh, nope. First name, it just does sounds like, similar, and initials. So it's only under the last name for Soundex because that's what Soundex is. It's just the surnames. Is there a handout? Yes, there is. I can pop the link again in the chat. Here you go. A future program idea is how to date photos. That sounds really great. And how to find pictures online. Thank you so much. Excellent program. Thank you so much. If you cycle on off Ancestry, do you lose what you've saved to your Ancestry tree, or is it still there when you cycle back on? Yes, it's always still there. As long as you remember that username and password that you used, it will still always be there. Like if you cancel your membership for 6 months or 3 years, it will still be there when you activate your membership again. You said up north people frequently got married in the UP. In southern Wisconsin, they frequently got married in Dubuque. Do you know why they left Wisconsin to get married? I have no clue. I don't know if it was the laws at the time, or maybe they decided to do destination weddings. Maybe that was the destination wedding of that time. Maybe it was where their pastor was. I have no clue why they decided to do that. But several members of my family I have found got married in the UP, which is always fun to find. Can you split off your tree, move a family without having to re-enter people? I have not found a way to do that. I think you kind of just have to create another tree if that's something that you wanted to do. But I have not found a way to like take one branch of your family tree and start it in a new tree, unfortunately. I don't know if you can set a tree as the default tree, but I would just pull up the tree and go to view it. When you return to the home page, that should be the tree that will appear. So that's what somebody said about putting a default tree on there for you. Is there a method to download your entire tree, not just the JED file, but also with the photos and sources? No, there is not. They only have the option to download that JEDCOM file. So like I've seen like I have some like I have photos on there, I have like stories attached to people. There's been no way that I've been able to download all of that information and like put it in Roots Magic or put it in Family Tree Maker or anything like that. So I would just always encourage you to always save an extra copy, save the photos, save those stories that you might find in like a Word file or some other format, like use snipping tool, use the screenshot thing and save it to your computer and do that 3-2-1 backup again to make sure that you're always keeping all of that stuff. Can you get a copy of the transcript? Of course, I will send it out when I send out a link to the handout and a link to the recording as well. Sometimes other places did not require blood work for marriages. That's interesting. I did not know that, but maybe during certain times, yeah. Have you or anyone ever used News Library at Genealogy Bank? Is it worth it? I have never used News Library, but I've used Genealogy Bank. So I'm not sure if News Library is part of Genealogy Bank or not. I'm a pretty new subscriber to Genealogy Bank. Another kind of tip or trick that I have for you is like I signed up for Genealogy Bank during the big family search, what is it called? Roots Tech? Yes, Roots Tech. Every March they do Roots Tech through Family Search Library, and it's been virtual the last 2 years, I believe, or last 3 years. During that time when they have Roots Tech, even if you're not attending Roots Tech in person, all the genealogy vendors like Ancestry.com, Genealogy Bank, newspapers.com, all the different genealogy societies, they almost always offer a discount during that time, like save $20 off your membership or get 50% off your membership. So sign up for that membership during that Roots Tech weekend, or sometimes they even have that deal for like the whole month of March. So that's when I signed up for Genealogy Bank. I got like 2 years of membership for like way cheap when I signed up during that Roots Tech weekend. What software works with Ancestry.com and is it worth it? So I know Family Tree Maker does sync with Ancestry.com. I personally have not used it, and it makes me a little nervous to sync something with my Ancestry.com because technology doesn't always 100% work when you need it to work or work correctly. If anybody has any insights into that or has used it and you want to type into the chat and let us know. Somebody says Roots Magic also works with Ancestry. Yeah, I think it's your preference and what you want to do and how comfortable you feel with syncing that. Personally for me, it's not something that I'm interested in doing to sync that. Are there other questions? Let me pop through the chat box and see if there's other questions in here that I missed while I was going through. You guys were a chatty bunch while I was talking here. All right. So somebody said that I've been told to uncheck or to remove the exact name box. Yeah, I would search either way. I would search definitely both ways. Like I said, using different search terms, using different search options. You can also use the advanced search. You could use that exact, you could use the exact and sounds like. Try multiple different ways because you never know what's going to work when you're searching an ancestry. And definitely don't be too specific. Someone says, my parents lived in one county, but I was born in a hospital over in the next county. Anyone looking for me where my family lived wouldn't find me. Yeah, that's correct. Can you find information of people that are still living? Yes, there are some collections, like Ancestry has like public record collections. I've found like marriage records for people that are still living. It really depends on the laws in that different state or that different county or country wherever they were married. Like I know for Wisconsin, we have none of our vital records online. We do now have an index on Ancestry that was just added a couple months ago. But you will never ever find a vital record, like the actual physical record of that marriage or that death or that birth on, because that's a Wisconsin state law that you cannot have that online. You at least get the index, which will tell you the date and the county, but you'd have to follow up offline to get a physical copy of that actual record. Someone said that at the University of Stevens Point Area Research Center, I was told that Wisconsin doesn't publish some older vital records. You must contact a government office to order a copy for a fee. Apparently these may have been preserved on microfilm but are not available. I have seen microfilms of large bound books with births in the late 1800s, so is this moratorium on vital records from the early 20th century? I'm not sure on that, but I know anything pre-1907 that is through the Wisconsin Historical Society, and you can get it at the area research centers. That's how I've done vital records that are pre-1907, but you can also get them from the different counties that they're in. So if it was Brown County, Wisconsin, you could go to Brown County, or you could go to the area research center at UW Green Bay if it's a pre-1907 one. Right, there's a couple people asking for the handout, sorry. I can post the link a couple other times, and again, I will send out a link to the handout as well when I send out the recording. And thank you people for sharing it again for those who joined late, I appreciate that. Someone asked again, do you lose info you've saved on Ancestry when you cancel for a month or so? No, you do not. Will the slideshow be available for downloading? Sure, I can send that out when I send out the recording and the handout and the chat transcript as well. Someone says, I paid for the newspapers.com as part of the Ancestry membership, but can't view tons of birth, death, wedding announcements because Wisconsin State Journal and other Wisconsin newspapers are premium newspapers. So frustrating. Yes. So newspapers.com has a couple different levels of membership. So they have the library edition, which has a certain subset of collections. They have a regular paid membership that has a subset of collections in newspapers. And then they have a premium subscription, which has some more recent ones or some different newspapers. So be sure before you sign up for newspapers.com or use it that you are making sure to select the right one that's going to have the newspapers that you're looking for. And yes, somebody said that sometimes Ancestry and newspapers.com will offer free access weekends. And if you save that URL and go access it later, you can sometimes get access to that when it has that premium block on there. So thanks for sharing that tip. I appreciate that. I don't know if they'll do it again for Father's Day, but hopefully. It seems like they've been doing it quite often. I've seen quite a few newspapers.com free weekends. So, but definitely save the URLs and be patient. And Fold 3 has free access usually around Memorial and Veterans Day, so save URLs from that time. Or again, you can use the library edition, but again, that's kind of a subset of the things that they have on Fold 3. Yeah, I'm so glad everybody found it so helpful. Thank you so much for your wonderful comments and for joining us today. Let's see if there's any more questions here. Can I search Wisconsin libraries from Arizona? So we have this thing called BadgerLink in Wisconsin that is only available to people who are physically in Wisconsin. It goes off your IP address, which is like the behind the scenes stuff that tells you where you are. Like for, you know, if I was visiting Florida or whatever, I couldn't access any of the Wisconsin stuff that's just through the Wisconsin library. But some of the databases, it really depends on what you're looking for and what databases you're wanting to use. Like, you know, if you wanted to use our newspapers.com, well, you can access that anywhere. Unless it's part of the BadgerLink thing, then you wouldn't be able to access it anywhere. Someone says, is there a way to merge trees and then work on a cleanup, or do you have other suggestions? I'm not aware of a way to merge two different trees on Ancestry. And if it sounds like you have a lot of cleanup to do, maybe it's just easier for you to start fresh, and look at it with a new set of eyes, definitely, and do it that way. That might be a better way for you than trying to merge two, and then it might create a huge mess for you. Yes, I think we're all guilty of getting click happy at times. Let's see. Can you find information on people that are still living? Yep, we did talk about that. There are some records. It again depends on the state or the county, whoever is the record holder, and what laws that they have. And some there's a waiting period, some there's not. Where do you find the snipping tool in Windows? All right. So let me share my screen again. So down here, if you have a little search box, you can do that. So what you do is you just type in snipping tool. And it's just an app, you just can click on it. And so how you use snipping tool is if you click on new, that will say you want to do a new snip. And what you do is you just draw a box around what you want to snip. So say this is what I want to snip. And then you draw a box and let go on the mouse. And then what you can do is you can click save, and then I could save this as like August, capsule, blah, 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 whatever I want to name it as, wherever I want to name it, and wherever I want to save it, and then click save. And then I'd be able to pull that up again as a picture file. I'm not sure if snipping tool is also on Apple products or not. I am not an Apple user except for my phone, unfortunately. So if anybody has any tool or tips or software that they use for Apple to get screenshots or something similar to snipping tool, you can feel free to type that into the chat. Someone asked, when county lines changed, which county should you enter on your tree? That's up to you. I personally always enter it under what the county was at that time my ancestor was there. So if it's switched names or switched boundaries, I would put it under whatever it was at that time that that record was created, because I personally think that that's the correct way to put it. You could also add, like, usually there's like a notes field or a description field in Ancestry where you could put a note like Brown County changed to blah, blah, blah county in 2000 or whatever, whenever the name change happened, so that you at least have that note for yourself and you remember then, hey, this county name changed or the boundary changed at such and such time. Someone also said that people went out of state to marry for no waiting time requirements or age requirements. And various states have had different laws regarding the age one can marry, and if it is not allowed, young people then marry without that parental consent. I also have an ancestor who was not supposed to get married in a certain time period after they got divorced, and instead of getting married again in Wisconsin, they went up to the UP because, I'm sure they didn't check then to make sure that it was enough time before he could get married again. So you never know. Some people circumvented those laws and things by doing that as well. And someone says in the early 1900s, many people in Michigan went to Indiana to get married as well. So again, that probably happens with every state or some different counties. If they're close to a border or even further away from a border, maybe they just went to different states, or like I've seen other people in Wisconsin get married in Illinois. Who knows what rhyme or reason or why they did that. So let's see what else. Some school districts didn't allow female teachers to be married, and they'd go to a different state to be married also. So yeah, helpful information. Is it worth your time to check the terms of service for each database? That's your call. I think a lot of people don't read terms of services or terms of use. I always definitely recommend at least checking the descriptions and things. It really depends. You definitely don't want to get your membership cut off for doing something against the rules, but it does take time to read those terms of services. So again, that's up to you. Someone says states had different laws surrounding how closely related the bride and groom could be. So yeah, that's something as well. And someone also shared that if someone is a college student, they can get international ancestry access for $4.99 a month. Man, I wish they would have had that when I was a college student. That's awesome. All right, is it worth doing a genealogy do-over, or is it better to clean up and correct the trees I have? Again, that's your call, but for myself, I think just doing a do-over might be better, or, doing a cleanup. It depends on how, accurate you want to be or how much you have to clean up. You might start cleaning up and then realize, hey, this is a lot more difficult than I thought. So it's definitely your call on how much time you want to spend doing that. What I personally have found, so what I do is I create books for each of my grandparents. So I'm on my last fourth and final one, and that's been helping me kind of go through, person by person, generation by generation, and making sure like, ooh, like, hey, I never got that birth record, or hey, I never got that marriage record, or like double checking my work that I did years and years ago before I'm putting it in the book and saying, oh, this is, what I believe to be true based on this information. So that's another way, like, if you have an end product in mind, or, you want to print a pedigree chart or something, making sure before you do that, going through person by person, and making sure that you have the correct information, kind of might be a mini do-over on that part of the family. Someone says in the last few weeks they've been finding pre-1907 marriage records under Wisconsin marriage records. So that's, I think, a database in Ancestry.com. So someone said, should I do a complete do-over of my tree, or should I clean up and correct the tree I have? I only have 335 people on it, and I've learned so much, especially about evaluation and proof from when I was a newbie. Yeah, if you have a small tree like that, definitely I would, go ahead and clean it up and correct it, or, do over. Like, I have like tens of thousands of people in my tree, so to start over fresh, like, I would rather do a cleanup and do a cleanup on certain branches of the tree. But again, maybe make your tree private then instead of public if you are, nervous about how accurate your tree is, or if you're using that to clean it up. Maybe save people from copying information that might not be correct, and put your tree as private instead of public. All right. Let's see, any other ones that I've missed? Is there Fold 3 on Ancestry, the entire subscription, or must you purchase an additional premium? So I'm not quite sure if, I know Fold 3 is that you can also buy it with Ancestry. I'm not sure if it's the complete version, or if you purchase Fold 3 on your own, if it gives you access to different collections or not. Personally, I've only ever used the Fold 3 Library Edition, which we're going to be talking about more in August on our Find Your Ancestors presentation. So if anybody has any experience with Fold 3 or using it with your Ancestry membership, if you could type that into the chat and let us know, we'd appreciate it. Let's see. Someone says Command-Shift-3 on a Mac will take a screenshot. So if you have a Mac computer, that's how you can take a screenshot of something that's indexed or something that you don't have ability to download it. Someone says, some of my ancestors in western Pike County, Illinois went across the Mississippi to Hannibal or Palmyra, Missouri. I was always told a set of great-grandparents got married in Brown County, Illinois in 1900, but really they didn't get married until 1903 and got married in Missouri. Yeah, so again, rethink those assumptions that you thought you knew, or, just because they lived in a certain area or you were always told that they got married at a certain time doesn't mean that that's true. You got to do that detective work and find the actual records. Someone says 2 of their aunts married out of state because eloping was in vogue during the 1920s. So yeah, maybe that is. Or yeah, sometimes people lied about when they were married because a baby was born, and maybe they, weren't quite married yet. So that could happen too. I like your Zoom background. Thanks. I'm in a cabin. This isn't my normal house or my normal Zoom background, but I'm on a little vacation right now and enjoying some time away. Someone said Fold 3 is free at Family Search Libraries. You can also get it free through some libraries. Again, we have it at Appleton Public Library, or again, check other local libraries that might be in your area and see if they have it if your local library doesn't have it. Someone says they have all access subscription through Ancestry. I believe it is the full access, as you don't get full access with newspapers.com, and they make sure to tell you that if you want to purchase the supplemental. All right, let's see a couple other things in the Q&A. I have synced Roots Magic and Family Tree Maker without issues. I only sync from Ancestry to my tree and all the media comes over. So if you have Family Tree Maker, feel free that you can use the sync and get all your media as well. Someone also said Family Tree Maker works very well and does sync with Ancestry. It is also a very easy program. Thank you. Someone says, is it worth doing a genealogy do-over, or is it better to clean up and correct the trees I have? Again, it really depends how big your tree is, how much of, cleanup you need to do. That's your judgment call. Again, it really depends. And someone says, can you get a guest badger account? I am not aware of any guest library accounts or guest things that you can do through Wisconsin. Again, like I said before, if you are a Wisconsin resident, you can get a library card for any of the Wisconsin libraries here, but you have to be a Wisconsin resident, or at least have, like if you're a snowbird or something, like you live in Florida part of the year and Wisconsin the other part of the year, you'd have to have some sort of proof of address to prove that you live in Wisconsin at least part of the year to get a card in Wisconsin. I know other library systems are different. Like I know I have a Minnesota card for when I've done some genealogy research in Minnesota. So again, depending on what library or libraries you want to get a card to, just call them and ask them what their rules are, or if they have a guest access. Sometimes they're charged for people who live out of state. Like I think I had to pay like $5 or something for the Minnesota one because I wasn't a Minnesota resident. So yeah, just check around, see what access there is and what libraries there are and what rules they have for what their access are. Someone says, when there are two marriage dates in places, did the wife marry near your parents, then the groom marry near your parents? I'm not quite sure what you mean when you say there's two marriage dates and places. Maybe you're connecting to two different people. Maybe there's people who, have the same names. Or maybe for whatever reason they have two marriage records. I've seen that occasionally on like birth records and things that, somebody has a birth record and then again, like 3 months later, it's the same person, but it was registered at a different time. Who knows, maybe they thought they didn't register that birth or that marriage and then they just ended up re-registering it again. And I'm sure it is possible maybe they married near the wife's parents and then married near the groom's parents. Who knows? And someone says, when I said I found marriage records pre-1907, it is a document, not an index. It includes the parents, witnesses, pastor name, etc. Yes, so for pre-1907 in Wisconsin, there's only indexes online. If you want the actual record, you have to go to the Wisconsin Historical Society, the area research centers, or to the county where that event happened in order to get that physical copy of that record. Online, you're only going to find an index. And someone says for the two different marriage dates and places, it could be a religious ceremony and a civil registration, so possibly. Someone wants to know, should you leave your tree public or private? That's completely up to you. Obviously, there's pros and cons to both. Public, of course, lets people find you a little easier. You can maybe connect with different cousins. But again, you're going to have people maybe who are copying your tree, or, if you're not sure about your research, or, some people use their tree as, holding their hints, or like they're attaching hints to things and not quite sure, maybe they haven't fully evaluated it before they attached it. That's something that you might be perpetuating, incorrect information then by having your tree public. But then if you have your tree private, maybe you're not having people reaching out to you, or you're not being able to be found. Some people have a public tree and a private tree. That's another option. You can have both. There's every tree you can have different settings, or you can make it public at certain times or make it private at certain times. Completely up to you. Again, there's pros and cons to both. Someone said, I found a newspaper article when my mom was 5 years old and participated in a church choir program. How can I attach the record to my mom? So again, you would go to her profile in your tree. So let's pull up my Ancestry account again. So if you go to your ancestors profile, whoever you want to attach it to, and under the add, right here where you're under facts, you just click on add. So if you have like a newspaper article or something, you could pick whatever one of these is, like if it was an article about a first communion or a graduation or any of these things. You can also create a custom one. So if you write custom event, you could just say like newspaper article on blah, blah, blah. You can put the date in here, the location, any description, and then you'd click on attach media. Oh, you have to enter information for the event to continue. So you probably have to have a date in there in order to attach it. But then under attach media, if you go to upload media and then choose files, you'd be able to attach whatever you had saved. So say whatever is on here is, you know, the newspaper article that you saved, you would just click on open, and then it's going to attach this to that person. It just sometimes takes a second. So again, you could add all the different facts and things, a description, whatever you wanted to do, and then click done, and then that's going to add it to your family tree. So see, it's right here then again. If you accidentally add something or you want to edit it, you can click edit, but like this, I'm going to delete because it's obviously not about that person. So you can also delete it. All right, let's see. If you enter the link above, you will see marriage document cannot be used for identity that gives them marriage details. So let me take a look at this. Yeah, so it looks like some pre-1907 records for Wisconsin are part of that marriage records. Huh, interesting. I've never seen those on Ancestry.com before, but yeah, it does look like, yeah, I'm not sure. You know, maybe Wisconsin changed their laws a little bit. I'm not sure. Yeah, and someone also suggested with the public-private trees, you can also mark persons as a theory with the tree tags. I try to do that on Ancestry if I'm not sure of a person. It doesn't guarantee that they will look at them, but if they're copying, but if they are looking at sources, they'll see that tree tag. So that's another option if that's something that you want to keep your tree public and just use the tree tags that you're not quite sure, you're working on verifying that information, things like that, working on a hunch, whatever. So it says, did you say the snippet tool is on Windows 11 computers? It's called Snipping Tool. So yes, if you're using a Windows computer, it is on Windows, and it's not on Apple as far as I know. Tree tag, can you explain it? Of course I can. So tree tags, so what you can do, let me pull up my tree again here. So if you go under Tools, I believe that's where it is. If you like view notes, you can view comments here. You can, make notes, make comments there, or there's also one called My Tree Tags. So you can either create custom tags, you can use the predetermined ancestry tags, like they have one on DNA, they have one on life experiences, they have one on relationships, things like that. You could also do research status. So there's one called actively searching or unverified, verified, things like that. So you can, if you do this, you can click on like unverified, and then you'll see under his name and under the relationship, that's one of the tags that I have attached to him right now. Or you can click brick wall. Again, you can create custom tags. Like I have custom tags for different wars. So like if I wanted to always find all my Civil War veterans, like I could tag them with Civil War, and then it would show up under that tag. Any other questions before I log off? Hopefully everyone found this helpful, and thanks again for joining us. I hope you'll join us Thursday, June 16th for our next presentation at 6 p.m. on Wisconsin genealogy resources, and I can pop that registration link into the chat for you guys. Again, that's Thursday, June 16th at 6 p.m. It will be recorded. I'm making sure to get all of our summer sessions recorded since it's going to be a different date and a different time. And yes, I am enjoying my time away, and the cabin has been wonderful. I've got one more day left, and then I have to come home to Wisconsin again. Thank you again, everyone. I appreciate all your time. And again, I'll send out the link to the recording, the slides, the handout, and the chat transcript as well next week once I have it all ready for you. All right, everyone, take care, and thanks again for joining us. Have a great day.